Do the Bucks have a Myles Turner problem? The usage for their big man needs to change, and realistically, what can it change for the Bucks? We didn't dig into it next on Locked On Bucks.
You are Locked On Bucks, your daily Milwaukee Bucks podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into Locked On Bucks. I'm Justin Garcia. You can find me and hear me on the Bucks Radio Network. We thank you for making this your first listen of the day, each and every day. And to everyone for making the Locked On Podcast Network the number one sports podcasting network in the industry. Today's episode brought to you by FanDuel. If you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com to place your NFL bets all season long. Joined today by Ti Windish of the Eurostep podcast. You and I talked last week on your show, and a lot has seemingly transpired or at least picked up since then. So I figured we would pick more of it up here. And one of the things that's changed, which I think we'll spend a decent amount of time on today, but there's kind of a hodgepodge of what's going on with Giannis, what's going on with his team, what's the landscape of the East that we'll touch on as well. But that is, Myles Turner. And these last few games especially, I forget, was it whatever game it was it the Pistons game or the one before that, where you just kind of notice like, oh yeah, Myles wasn't really out there a lot in the fourth quarter. And then it started to become a trend throughout the week where the minutes played have really dipped for the full game and in the fourth quarter. We heard Doc Rivers talk, I think, before the Philly game, or maybe it was before the second Pistons game, about the Philly game, saying like, well, Myles just wasn't having a good game, so we went with Bobby in those spots. I don't know what to make of it, quite frankly, because even if Myles was not having a good game, and I would say the eye test would tell me maybe, but not to the levels of like, this is awful and you need to get him off the floor. Even if that were the case, it's just interesting because of what you've invested in him and seemingly kind of tied everything in the plan this season and your proposal to Giannis and Myles Turner.
Yeah, interesting is a good word. It was the Philly game, so the first time of that back-to-back where the Bucks were, sticking around. They didn't punt to garbage time until the last minute of that game, where Jericho Sims played just under 5 minutes. Bobby Portis played 9.5 minutes. Myles Turner logged 1 minute and 34 seconds in the fourth quarter when you're seeing the rest of the starters playing, from 7 minutes which was Rollins, to nearly 10 of KPJ. So it wasn't just, the Bucks kind of punting and giving up on the game. They just didn't go with Turner down the stretch. And he ended up taking 2 free throws and blocked a shot in that time, but didn't have any other shot attempts. Turner didn't. And this has been something that I think I've been monitoring a little bit even before that back-to-back, but that was certainly where it became the most pronounced. And if you look at those 2 games just alone, Jericho Sims is the Bucks' leading minutes getter from bigs with 60 and second on the team. Turner is played less than Gary Trent Jr. and Kyle Kuzma. He's played 48 total minutes, so 24 per game. And then Portis is just 5 behind him at 43. So really odd the way the Bucks' big man rotation is shaking out right now. And I think you can understand why Sims got the opportunity off of his career game against Detroit. He was instrumental in that win, 15 points and 14 boards. And he does theoretically bring the defense and rebounding. That's really all that he's bringing, right? Most games that the Bucks have sorely needed. But I think, that's great. It does remind me a lot of the Andre Jackson Jr. situation from the last 2 years of just like, you can throw that guy in as a starter. You can say you need what he brings. The limitations, though, are still the limitations. And that was very obvious with Sims, who in those 60 minutes over the weekend scored 4 total points on 2 total shots. And that's just not enough for a starter in the NBA when you're down your best offensive player. And I just don't think it's something the Bucks can lean on. To your point, Turner waxes and wanes. The rebounding has been disappointing. Indiana fans were, on to something when they noted that. But I don't think it's been significantly better with him off the court. And he can just do so much. I mean, the most frustrating part about this is Remember that Miami game where the Bucks almost won without Giannis in Miami? It was a very impressive cup game. They would have probably made the cup quarterfinals or whatever here if they had won. And it was a large part because they unlocked Turner. Some of it's the way Miami defends. They switch everything, but they were immediately going to him when there was a small on him, which happens even with Giannis out of the games. And he was either going up and scoring, he was making nice passes. And it feels like we've really seen none of that since. For too often, Turner just feels like, if you happen to be open from three, you can shoot it. Otherwise, set a screen maybe, defend the rim. Like his role feels like an afterthought. And to something else you said, that just feels ridiculous for a player who the front office invested this much in. That, is there a plan here? Or is it just if he's shooting the cover off the ball, he'll play? And if not, we might go with Sims, who's a veteran minimum, and Portis, who was supposedly going to be your sixth man coming into the year.
Yeah, I mean, for all intents and purposes, you're paying Myles Turner $50 million this year because of the Dame stretch. And for the duration of his contract, that's kind of how you have to view it. So it does beg the question of, are both sides on the same page here, front office and a coaching staff? Because if it happens in one game, then fine, let's just kind of set the expectation of, we expect more from you and we need more from you, especially in these games and moments when Giannis is down. So this is why this happened. Let's move towards that in the next game. But it's been multiple games now that we've seen it. I think the thing we are all most anticipating is, Thursday when you return to the floor. Number one, I hope it's a close game against the Celtics team that's playing red hot right now, because then we can see, does this trend continue in the fourth quarter here? The rebounding for Myles, I remember talking about it with Tony East over the summer too, and he kind of felt like, yeah, I know Pacers fans complain about it. I don't think it's quite as bad as they complain, and in many ways it kind of echoed a lot of what we would discuss with Brook Lopez, where it's not as simple as just look at the rebounding numbers. What I will say is the Bucks' difference in their rebounding rate with Brook on the floor versus off was greater than what we saw from Indiana, where, yeah, they were a better rebounding team with Myles on the floor, but it didn't feel like it was quite to the level as we saw with Brook. So you did kind of go in eyes open to that, knowing, well, there's a couple of things to keep in mind here. Number one, Brook has been an Iron Man. Number two, even though he doesn't secure rebound, he creates those opportunities. And these are going to be important when you've chipped away at your superstar depth. You need guys that are going to play most every game. And if you're going to be a good defensive team, you're going to have to close the possession. And that's arguably been the biggest issue facing the Bucks this season. It's not squarely on the shoulder of Myles. It's a number of guys, as you mentioned, that at this point, I think you would look at it and say, yeah, there's maybe two guys that I feel good about rebounding, and one of them isn't playing right now. The other is Jericho Sims. But that kind of puts you in the spot that we're in right now of, yeah, team wide, this isn't just one thing. This is many things that have led you here.
Yeah, and I think rebounding too. I mean, you watch closely when other teams get offensive rebounds. And I think sometimes it is against the Pistons, Jalen Duren just outmuscles Myles Turner and gets a rebound. He does that to a lot of guys. But a lot of the time it's, Turner going to try and help off a drive, and then nobody bumps or boxes out the big, or a player crashing in from the rim. And, there's only so much one big can do about the whole team rebounding. It is a team kind of stat by and large. And I think the Bucks, to your point, just they skew small. They start 2-point guards. They start AJ Green at the three, or now it's changed up a little bit who they're starting. Maybe it'll be Trent. We'll see. But outside of their bigs, they're a very small team, and they have not been physical enough and just went and gotten rebounds. The hope was Kevin Porter Jr. could help with that a little bit because he is a good rebounder from the point guard position. Ironically, Cole Anthony is also a good rebounder from the point guard position despite the size, but he has not been playing really at all since KPJ got healthy. But it hasn't been enough. They still gave up a ton of offensive boards to Philly and to Detroit. Now, those are big physical teams. Andre Drummond, for the many faults, is maybe the best rebounder of his generation, just kind of quietly a bench guy now, but still can do it. But it's still, they're losing games consistently because surprisingly their offense has been okay in the latest non-Giannis. KPJ has been a revelation there, but they just lose the possession battle by so much every game that, even when they were first in half court offense, they were losing. Now they're not first. They're like okay in offense and definitely still losing.
Yeah, and I mean, one other thing has started to pop up there with the possession battle and kind of the margins that they have to win on. I do want to touch on Myles Turner's individual numbers, though. I want to take a look at those and how it checks out against our expectations coming into the season. I know Camille and I talked about it quite a bit. All of our listeners had thoughts, too, on what he would average and who would be the second leading scorer. So we'll revisit that coming up next on today's Locked On Bucks. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. That's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting. You're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment. Live betting is best when the game starts to shift. A receiver that gets hot, defense tightening things up, momentum flipping on a turnover. And FanDuel lets you jump into the moment. Live spreads and money lines adjust instantly. Player props update as guys heat up. You can bet next touchdown scorers, drive results, totals, and more. It keeps you locked into every snap, every drive, every possibility. So if you want to be right in the middle of the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your live NFL bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you. So for Myles individually, Camille and I talked about it quite a bit. I would assume you felt the same. I didn't think Myles Turner was going to be the second leading scorer on the team coming into the season. I thought there was a chance. I thought if he was, you were going to have a lot of guys that were kind of averaging 17 or 18, a couple, and Myles was one of them. But I think it's easy for Bucks fans to look at this and say, I'm disappointed in what you're getting here. I expected bigger things because statistically it has been a disappointment. Shooting 44% from the field after a stretch of 50% shooting from Indiana and 48, I think he was last year. He has been good hitting the three, even though it kind of seems like similar to Brook Lopez, ironically enough, where I think people only see the misses that Myles Turner has from the outside, but he's 39% there. But his point production right now is the lowest it's been since the year the Bucks won the title, which we can no longer say was only X amount of years ago. Like, it's getting further down that hill now. And his usage rate is the other thing that I looked at least with cleaning the glass, which is going to take out a lot of fourth quarter minutes from Myles. But a 17, if we round out, percent usage after, this guy in more of an egalitarian system with the Pacers was 19 last year, in the 20s the 2 years prior to that. I know, Giannis is the son here and moves a lot, but Tyrese Halliburton was a similar guy for the Pacers, and for his usage to be down there, to me, is the most troubling of any of the counting numbers.
Yeah, and I mean, even Halliburton, and then, Siakam, another legitimate star in Indiana, and to your point, like a team that kind of famously was not, I'd say mostly run through Tyrese, but kind of ran through everyone, which, I would think that worst case would be the same usage with the Bucks, right? Like, Giannis is going to be probably higher than any individual player almost around the league now that Luke's playing with Austin Reeves, but certainly more than anyone on the Pacers. And I think the dips are really troubling. The funny thing about his shooting percentage is it's mostly just because he's taking the same amount of threes, but just way less twos.
Yeah.
He's taking 3.7 twos per game, which is by far a career low. He was almost 6 last year. He had more than 7 the 2 years before that in Indiana. His 2-point percentage is down slightly, but he's just taking even more threes than ever and way less twos. So again, kind of the evidence to that point of he's basically just been used as a 3-point shooting big, which was mostly of how Brook Lopez was used too. And I think is made more sense then when it was like, okay, we have Chris Middleton, we have Drew Holiday, we have Damian Lillard plus Giannis. Like, there's a lot to do on offense. We don't need our big as involved. There's not as much of that star power anymore. And I do think Turner is, if not going to be their second leading scorer, I thought he'd be 16 to 18, which is where he was roughly the last 3 years, somewhere in that range. Probably about 7 boards, and 12.6 and less than 6 boards is certainly disappointing. Also a Since the rookie year, this is the fewest blocks per game he's totaled, despite not playing that many fewer minutes. I think some of that is the Bucks, especially earlier, used him really aggressively far from the rim, and it's harder to block shots out there. So some of the, I mean, I don't think he's played exceptionally, but honestly, a lot of the underlying stats for like his performance per shot are not all that different. He's just not being utilized, and maybe some of that's him. He needs to rebound more, and that would get him more minutes. The ball finds energy, whatever. But I do think a lot of these numbers, when you really dig in, speak to what we said initially, which is this is a skilled player who is just not being all that utilized. The one number that's up, he is actually averaging a career high in assists per game so far, so is doing a little bit more passing. We know the Bucks are so much spacing so that when he does see two, he's able to find that open shooter, which is great. But offensively, I do think they should and could get more out of him, especially with Giannis out. I mean, he's the best big guy in the roster right now. So if he's going to be the third fiddle in that rotation, I just think you're losing out on a lot of offensive potential with Turner that, again, you invested a lot to bring him over to Milwaukee. Let's see what he can do.
Yeah, and what I would encourage everyone to is, I think your point on the 2-point shooting is what has been most persistent for me of like, well, look, you just got to get this guy involved, and you got to meet him halfway and find his comfort zone, especially if you're going to be playing without Giannis. Like, you don't have to worry, well, this is how this fits around Giannis. You don't have to worry about that for probably 3 more weeks. So what gets you going? Where do you want the ball? Where are you most comfortable? Like, that's what we need to move to here, which makes it, I suppose, troubling just to see the lack of playing time down the stretch in the fourth quarter. Like, if anything, it should be the opposite, to say, okay, we're going to lean into you and KPJ, and we'll see if we can get a 2-man game going here. Rollins as well. If you look at the shot chart for Myles Turner this year and look at it last year, look at it the last 2 years in Indiana, it is noticeable what's missing. And I think anybody that remembers, everybody listening and watching this show that remembers the 20 times that the Bucks and Pacers have played the last 2 years, where has Myles Turner routinely killed the Bucks? He's hit a lot of top of the key threes, but it's at the elbow, it's at the free throw line, and those mid-range shots where you're playing the drop. And I get part of that is the defense you're going to face. When I was talking with Tony too, he had told me, yeah, the Pistons, Myles always has big games against the Pistons because of the drop. And you're not utilizing him in that or in key minutes in some of those games. But if you just do a side-by-side, and it's not the greatest to pull up the image and show you, but I would just encourage everyone, go to Basketball Reference, look at the shooting tab, look at the shot chart, look at where Myles was feasting last year on not only the made shots, the shot attempts, and look what's missing this year on that chart. Like, that tells the story.
Yeah, and I think it's great to talk about the offense this much, and I think there's a lot more Myles Turner can offer offensively. And the other end, and the thing that doesn't sit well with me with the like, well, he wasn't playing well, so we'd cut his minutes, is it just feels like there's been numerous games when Bobby Portis was 2 of 7, 2 of 11, and giving you much less on the defensive end. And we'll just leave it there. But I don't think anyone should argue giving you much less on the defensive end than Myles Turner can both. And still the minutes were the same in that situation. And I think Turner needs to be relied on more, yes, more offensively, but also I think he is kind of your key cog defensively now. I'd say kind of a combo of him, and you have 2 point guards who can press, which is great. But I'm a little surprised we haven't seen more, you mentioned it with Detroit, more of the traditional drop, especially against some of these teams like Andre Drummond not spacing you, Jalen Duren not spacing you. I mean, most of the Pistons roster not spacing you. We've seen a ton of zone. Turner can be a really effective drop big too. He led the league in blocks twice when he was younger. Still, it's been a little while, but you have these guards who can navigate screens. You have your drop big. I think the Bucks probably, ironically, need to kind of go back to those Doc days and stop trying to maybe reinvent the Bud days, not stop trying to reinvent the wheel as much with some of this aggressive defense, because that coverage works. That coverage didn't work when, you're playing a mid-range assassin who's red hot or a team who's 5 out, but most teams aren't that. And in the regular season, especially, that coverage works. And I think that could help Myles be utilized more defensively, which is really, I mean, we've been talking a lot of offense. Their offense has been okay. Their defense has been a train wreck since Giannis gone out. And that's where they could really use Turner to help too. I mean, that's the whole thing about getting him was two-way stretch five, and he could do more defensively, but you could drop with him as well. And I would hope they can get him more comfortable on both ends because I think there's a lot more potential there.
I don't know where it is on NBA.com. I frankly have not been motivated to check the last couple of days, but on cleaning the glass, I think they're 24th defensively.
Yeah.
And like the offense has been, I think the offense has been fine considering that Giannis has missed now close to half of the season, but I believe they were like 16, 17, which again, like, yeah, you got good shooters on the team, but they're guys that are largely catch and shoot guys that need created for them. And if Giannis is gone, you're going to be hurt there. So yeah, the defense has not been anywhere near good enough. And I think the biggest flaw that we saw with the drop was, not only the mid-range guys, which as you pointed to, that it's fewer and fewer even now in the league. But I think we just tend to remember the drop defense in its dying days of Bud and the last couple of years as well with Brook Lopez, where not so much Bud, but the last 2 years where you just didn't have the personnel on the perimeter. Like it's one thing if you're going to have Drew Holiday and Wesley Matthews and other guys that can stay on their man and win on the perimeter, but when it's Malik Beasley and Dame or other guys that are going to get beats and you're in the drop, like, of course things are going to look bad. And of course teams are going to get offensive rebounds when Brook Lopez contests because it's 2-on-1. So yeah, I would be very much in favor of at least can we sprinkle in more of this and instead of just the zone as the crutch this team has gone to, maybe we can start to go to a drop defense as the thing to take a look at. But yeah, I'm not laying it at the feet of Myles Turner. I'm not saying Myles Turner is blame free, but it has been a disappointment so far, and it has not been what you hoped it would be 25 games into the season. But again, in fairness to Myles, I don't think it's exclusive to just that. It's a lot of things that we're saying. This has been a disappointment for this group, which then leads to the big picture conversation, which is not going to die down ever again. Would you say that's fair to say? Like, so long as Giannis is here, we're never going to hear the end of this through the course of this season. Once the trade deadline passes, if he's still on the team, it's going to be talk about, but just wait until the summer. If that passes, it's going to be, the trade deadline, like it's going to be up until Giannis is no longer here that we continue to hear that. We've heard and seen a few updates. When we talked last week, it was just starting to pick up. So what's changed since then? And realistically, how do we see this unfolding? We'll get into those conversations coming up next. There's no reason to let big wireless drain your wallet, especially during the holidays. And right now, Mint Mobile is running their best deal of the year. All of their unlimited plans are 50% off. So you can lock in 3, 6, or even 12 months of unlimited premium wireless for just $15 a month. The easiest way to take your overpriced phone bill and give it the full Scrooge treatment. What makes this even better is how simple Mint makes the switch. No contracts, no nonsense. Just real savings and real quality service. Switching to Mint lets you keep your same coverage for a lower price. Setup takes only a couple of minutes. You bring your own phone and number without any issues. The service is fast, super reliable, even on the go. It feels good knowing you're not paying just to stay connected. Turn your expensive wireless present into a huge wireless savings future by switching to Mint. Shop Mint Mobile unlimited plans at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. That is mintmobile.com/LockedOnNBA. Limited time offer, upfront payment of $45 for 3 months, $90 for 6 months, or $180 for the full year plan required. Taxes and fees, initial plan term only. 35 gigabytes may slow when network is busy. Capable device required. Availability, speed, and coverage varies. See mintmobile.com for details. So as the Giannis turns, we had the social media cleansing, which a few pointed out this actually happened a week or a couple weeks ago, and we've kind of seen similar things from him before.
We were prescient on that. I just want to say our pod we did on Eurostep. We didn't even I think you saw that during the show. I didn't even know. And we were kind of like, oh, this feels like it could get bad. And it all snowballed, right? I just want to say I feel like our instincts were on. I just wanted to give us a little bit of a little flowers for that. But go on. There's a lot more you need to sum up.
So that happened, and we had a very defiant Doc Rivers going into the Pistons game, right? It was, oh, by the way, now the Pistons come to town too with this hanging over you. But we had a very defiant Doc Rivers who was adamant that this is nonsense. And Giannis has never told me he wants to be traded. We don't have these conversations. He talks to the guys. I did hear earlier in the day before the game, there was a players only meeting that included all players. And we also heard from Bobby, from KPJ, from Kuz, I think from Rollins after that game. And they all kind of gave the same message too of Yanni still communicates with us and talks to us about this, this, and this. And he was the first one. That was the game he got hurt, by the way. He was the first one to text us in the group chat. And we know what the outside chatter is. It's just been bizarre because the reporting that's out there, and my stance has long been, without going too far in a spot that can get me into trouble here, there's a lot of smoke here that I don't think this is entirely fabricated and made up. There is clearly something that's coming out. You don't get to ESPN and just, let's make up stories because we want Giannis out of Milwaukee. So what if we do this? Maybe that can grease the wheels. To that level, that does not happen. What we haven't heard from Giannis, and even going back to what we heard, when he came back from COVID, that was not a ringing, I am in Milwaukee for the rest of my career and I'm never leaving. That wasn't a, yes, I had these discussions and I want to be traded, but that was very much in the middle and not as strongly worded as we've heard from him in the past. So if you just use all the context that's out there, if this was any other player that did not play for the Bucks, we would all be saying, well, it seems like his days are numbered and the trade is inevitable here. So I think there's that you have to put out there and say, look, if we level set, let's acknowledge this. But then we saw Giannis with a brief return to social media. We heard Chris Haynes say, Giannis told me, when I see a wall, I don't go through the door, I run through the wall, and I'm committed to making it work here. It's just funny because it's kind of and I don't mean this as a knock on Chris Haynes, but where he said, can you tell me where that was even said? That now it's kind of if a tree falls in the forest, that ESPN and Shams has the platform, and there was even more reporting that came out as we're recording this from Shams and ESPN that seemed to go against that. So the long story short is, look, one of these parties is lying, and I don't know which of the two it is. I don't know when we'll find out, but we will eventually find out.
Yeah. The thing about the whole it's ESPN wants him out, and the idea, I'm not saying this either, but the idea that it's all fabricated. To your point, on media day, Giannis was asked directly multiple times, really kind of followed up and hey, is this ridiculous or what? And never once said, yeah, that's not true. I never, the Knicks thing totally.
I don't remember meeting with the Bucks.
Yeah, he did. That was probably the most declarative thing that he had said. And, he said he's excited about the season. He's committed, whatever. Never said, oh, it's not true. Do you this whole, and I've seen too about oh, this is agents doing what agents do.
Right.
Giannis's agents work for Giannis. If Giannis was sitting here injured, trying hard to play for the Bucks,
what are you guys
I'm
doing
not pushing
here?
that.
Yeah.
Right. He could literally today go on Instagram, where we know he has access. He's posting random memes in the middle of the night and say, I don't want to be traded. I love the Bucks. I, committed. You could say that anytime. And what would happen? It would all go away. I mean, it would. It's real enough.
It would go away-ish, but it would be, let's keep an eye on what happens here in Milwaukee.
Yeah. But it would quiet a lot. Yeah. I mean, he's the guy. It comes from him. This isn't some conspiracy of people are goading Giannis into this. Yeah. Giannis, I don't think is someone who agents or ESPN or Adam Silver can be I mean, he's talking about starting a rival league, and not even the NBA itself potentially can tell Giannis what to do.
Right.
It's him. So I mean, this is not obviously sourced. No one knows for sure what Giannis is thinking. I think that's pretty obvious from kind of two different things coming out of some sort of Giannis's camp here, to your point. It just feels like wants to go but doesn't want to be the one to do it. And I just don't know if the Bucks organization is ever going to fully decide like, oh, it's our time to do it. Like we're going to be the bad guys and just trade him. And I don't even know I don't know how it would go over. I don't think it would be popular, but I think we are at a point now where a lot of people would kind of get it. I mean, we're sitting in 10th in a tie with 11th to the Bulls, who would be in 10th, but they've lost 7 straight games somehow. And the report that came out of someone in Chicago, like, Giannis came to us, but we said thanks, but no thanks. Just like the funniest part of this whole thing. But yeah, I don't know.
Unless that did happen in their viewing, which I don't think it did, but their view of it was like, let's just wait 2 years and sign you and not give anything up.
Yeah. I don't know. I shouldn't have brought the Bulls into this if we're going to get too sidetracked. They're too funny, but it's clearly not all false, because there would have been a simple thing to do if it was. And it's going to be interesting now, because the today's report from ESPN, just like the last one from Shams, was it wouldn't be a Knicks exclusive window. And I really think therein lies the rub of, I think if there was a slam dunk Knicks deal, like if they had Towns and Deuce was still cheap and they had like 10 firsts, I kind of think it just
didn't make the 2 trades they previously did. Yeah.
Yes. I kind of think it would have just happened. Like clearly there was no one from Giannis or the Bucks refuted. Like, yeah, we had a trade talk about Giannis. Again, this is the kind of thing like you want to cope and just gloss over. Hugely significant that got far enough to do that. And now the question is there a team where he would want to go to that wants him enough and has the stuff? And I really think like if that all slides to yes, if the stars align, I think there'll probably be a trade. I just, to your point, you kind of just have to think when there's a ton of smoke, there's usually fire and not a smoke machine. And I don't think this is a smoke machine.
Yeah, I mean, go back and ask Portland fans, like, what was the timeline of events? And, like, how did this start to play out with Dame, ironically enough, which you benefited from, although in the grand scheme of things, it was not
really
a benefit for the Bucks. And, honestly, that's probably what you look back on. And again, it's not like a shot at Dame, but just that offseason of, the firing of a coach and whether or not it was time, whether or not he still had the locker room and still had that voice, like valid conversations to be had, but firing a proven coach who was one of the more successful coaches in the league for that, decade, basically, with his arrival in Atlanta, won you a championship. And it just didn't feel like there was a clear plan on replacing him. Just, we are making this coaching change. And we saw what that blew up into eventually, trading for Dame. I mean, right there, the identity of the team was gone. It was a defensive team that had an offense that was good enough and a superstar. And you're still, frankly, searching for what the identity of this team is. Mark Stein had some things as well, which I have to go back and read it again, but I want to say like 2 days ago, Stein in his newsletter had that, like, the message from the Bucks is like non-starter. We're not listening to calls. We're not returning calls, like not fielding off because we are not shopping him. And in his update yesterday, I think he had basically what Shams had, that like, yeah, everybody I've talked to has kind of felt like it's inevitable. Nate Duncan has talked about it a while, and he's been one of the national guys that has said, I want Giannis to get traded, but I don't think he will, for years. And he's even said, like, I've always kind of taken Giannis at his word, and his word has always been more so I'd rather stay here, but now I honestly don't know what to make of any of this. So it leads to a ton of ambiguity. I'm not saying to be a doomer and to do this fear mongering and say, well, Giannis is trying to get traded. I'm just saying, like, we need to keep our eyes open through this process and not just slam the door on it because of the smoke that's out there. And the notion too, that it's just like, we want, get him out of a small market, get him to a bigger market. I mean, number one, we're looking how, not to this level, but how similar things played out each of the previous 2 times. Like, it took a trade for Drew. It took a trade for Dame. before an extension was signed. And also, like, if the goal is to prevent stars from getting to smaller let's just get everybody to big markets. How have the Bucks, the Nuggets, the Thunder last year, like, how have these teams won championships in the last 5 years? How are the Thunder set up to be arguably a dynasty and
Adam
the best
Silver's
team we've
got a
seen
lot
in
of
recent
work
years?
to do. Yeah, with Oklahoma
Right.
City, if this is he's got to get on the phone, get Chet out of there, get everyone, Shea, they all have to go.
But yeah, I mean, I think ultimately the challenge of it is there's no easy fit that's out there because of the moves that the Knicks did. If that is your desired destination, I'm sorry. Like, there's not a trade that makes sense for the two of us. There's trades that make sense for the Knicks, but not for the Bucks because of the lack of assets. I don't know that the Knicks even have a first rounder they can technically trade.
It's like a swap this year, which is like such a joke. You shouldn't even include it.
Yeah,
That's
because like
not
they
conveying.
could potentially get 2 first rounders this year, right? But it would require the Wizards dropping out of the top 9, which is likely, as long as they finish with one of the 4 worst records, it's not going to happen. So the Knicks just don't have the assets, and if you're the Bucks, if you do decide to trade Giannis, even with the lack of assets that you have in the immediate future, your best play is to still say, we need short-term assets to stock up there and things that are going to help us down the road, because if he's gone with the rest of this roster, we're not going to be an Eastern Conference contender for a couple of years. So like bringing back a Karl Anthony Towns and a much, much, much lesser version of Giannis, that does nothing for us other than kind of keep us in purgatory.
Yeah, I think it's an interesting conversation that's been floated a lot of like, what do the Bucks owe Giannis? And I think it's fair to an extent when you get to a spot like this to say, okay, let's say Utah had the best package. I don't think they do, but like all their picks, whatever. I think it's fair to say we're not going to trade you to Utah. We're not going to trade you to Brooklyn, unless he really likes New York. But like we won't send you to basketball hell because they have the most picks. I think that's fair. But I also think, what do they owe Giannis? And Giannis has signed 3 max contracts with the Bucks. He has 2 of his brothers on roster spots. I mean, they've made a lot of decisions reportedly at the behest of Giannis. He's won a couple of MVPs, the NBA Cup, the NBA Championship, some finals MVPs at those arenas. Like, it's not been all Bucks. I think Giannis has done more for the Bucks than vice versa, but I also think the Bucks have all the trades that they've made. Like, I think they've kind of dedicated the better part of the last 10 years all to Giannis and some of the future picks. I don't think they owe him the whole next decade as well. And I do think you're kind of sentencing yourself to at least 5 years of like, oh, this is really bad and we're sending our picks away every year if you take back Towns and 6 second-round picks or whatever. Like, I don't think that's a tenable trade you can make. Or even if you get OG too. Like, I just think you're just really putting yourself back. And this is kind of a golden parachute situation where you're without all these assets, but you should be able to recoup. To your point, if the package doesn't include 26, 27 picks or like a dynamite young player, which we haven't talked about anything like that, you just can't. And that's like the Heat too, because of this Rozier thing. And they're trying like hell to reverse the trade now, which everyone's like, you can't, that's not possible. They owe their 27. They can't trade 26 or 27, 28 swap. You can't take a package that's whatever, Tyler Hero and a 28 swap. Like, that is, you're just stuck in the wasteland for 3 years then.
Yeah. I mean, we're a long ways from getting there, but like,
it's just, when those teams come up, that's just what I think of. Like, you just can't do that.
Right. And I just like mean what you owe Giannis. I agree with your point, largely in that, like, the way I would view it is if you have 2 offers on the table and one is like an A- offer from a team like, wow, they're really interested in him, and the other is a B offer from like, they'd be a pretty good team with Giannis. Like, all right, take the B offer. That's what you owe him. But like, just like, well, you want to go to New York, so here we go. We're gonna just take back a crap deal in return. The number one jump starter is, if the Atlanta Hawks are interested and you can get the other half of that pick swap and you get 2 picks this summer, in a very, very good draft. Potentially both could be top 5 depending on what happens with you, because the Pels lost again last night and they have the worst record in the league. That is the immediate fix to infuse some young talent into this. You'd have to take back matching salary, but that's it for everybody looking at, well, how can you say these are the offers for Giannis? These are laughable offers. Look at what the Knicks gave up for Bridges. Look at what the Magic gave up for Desmond Bane. I mean, the timing and the context is the important part of all of it. That I do think, even though it was 2 summers ago, the Bridges trade, the going back further than that, the Rudy Gobert trade. Those are deals you're not going to see anymore. Not that volume of picks, but that volume of picks for those types of guys. And the problem is with this CBA, there isn't that volume of picks that teams have. And teams also know if we're going to trade for a $55 million contract, which, oh, by the way, we also have to extend into the mid 60s and 70s, we kind of need mid-level contracts on our team as the way we ended out. Otherwise, we get 2 years and we're right back in the second apron. We're screwed and we got to immediately start to tear this thing down. So we better win 2 championships if we pull off this deal. I think that's a lot of what the Bucks are up against when you see reporting of some teams might not be interested because of this. I think that's actually legit because of the cap construction and just how cumbersome this has been, even more so than teams likely anticipated to sign off on this. But also the Bane trade. Well, the matching salaries in that deal were bad contracts. So that is part of the addition of picks that you're getting for that of okay, we're going to take these contracts too, so you need to give us even more. And sure, you can point to players the Bucks could package. I don't see that happening. If this is a multiplayer deal on the Bucks end, I think the players would share the same last name, because any other contract that you add to the 55, think about that volume. Kyle Kuzma. I'm in no way, shape, or form saying Bucks should trade Kyle Kuzma and Giannis, but let's say you do that. That's $75 million in salary next year going out. So that is a massive chunk of your cap. And sure, you're sending some out, but that's 2 guys, and you're probably sending out 3 or 4 guys to make up for that.
Yeah, and I think your other point about, and Windhorst reported that about the picks, and I know Windhorst had to walk back a different report in the last week, but I believe that one a bit more. You also just can't extract blood from a stone, and there's 4 teams that have almost all the picks. So if you're not dealing with one of those 4 teams, you're probably dealing with a team that doesn't have all of their own picks, even much less these extra picks. It can't scale up because oftentimes it's kind of just you just get the picks that a team has, and that's kind of the deal when it's a player of this caliber. Most teams aren't Oklahoma City or San Antonio. So if it's not one of those 2, it's probably a team that can't give you 15 first if you think that should be the price. And again, Oklahoma City just that's the other factor too. And do I want to trade for Giannis, who's missed time in 4 of the last 6 playoffs, when the OKC Thunder are 21-1 so far? And are we gonna? Is anyone gonna win besides them in the next 2 years?
I think that's the biggest part of this that not as many people are talking about. Is sure, the cost that it would take to bring in a Giannis and what it would do to your cap and the picks and players you'd have to give up, and would you be gutting your team that brings in Giannis? But also the Thunder. And I know going into this season, I said, I think way too many of us are just assuming the Thunder are going to roll through this because we've seen the league say no more dynasties and we're going to have a different title team 7 years in a row. I'm ready to walk those back with how this group looks. But do you view this as, okay, maybe we can win the East if we're an Eastern Conference team that trades for him. Maybe it puts us over the top. If we're a Western Conference team, maybe it puts us in a better spot. Do we think it makes us good enough to beat this Thunder team for the next 2 years? Or should we wait and make our move 2 years from now when they've got to start to break up the group, when all those extensions start to kick in? Do we go for it now, or do we wait and see what happens in OKC?
Therein lies the Spurs problem for me. I think you got Wembanyama, you got Harper, you got Castle, you got more picks coming in. their team they feel good about. They've been a good team this year. I'm just not sure those stakeholders look at that and go, we're better than OKC if we make this move. The one team that in the West that I think is the most interesting is Houston for that reason.
Yeah.
Historically, a very aggressive team who is right there. And hey, a team that can rebound. I mean, imagine unleashing Giannis in this team where like we're just going to go get every board. Pairing Giannis and KD, given their history, would be pretty awesome from a neutral fan perspective. And I think Amen Thompson is the kind of player where they have a lot of good picks too. But like Amen Thompson and quality picks, I think that is the kind of package where if you're Milwaukee, it's like, all right, we don't really want to do this, but if it's going to happen, that's I think one of the teams that would make sense. But I think the East teams, a lot of them, like if you're Atlanta and you can win the East, like pretty big deal. Yeah, even if you don't win the title, I mean, it's been a long time for them. So I think the East team's more likely, but I think if you're in the West, I mean, unless you're Houston or delusional, I just don't know if those teams are going to talk themselves into it.
Minnesota, but they again don't
have the stuff. Yeah. It's like New York.
Yeah. If you're the East, like we think this definitely makes us the best team in the East, that we have the best player in the conference. We're already presumably a good team. And then we just hope that it's a war of attrition in the West and we don't even have to worry about the Thunder.
Right.
But yeah, it's what makes it incredibly complicated is there is no perfect fit out there. There is no team that has the most assets and makes sense. There's not even a team like in the case of the Knicks, like, they got enough that I think you can make it work. And also, oh, by the way, we haven't heard Giannis specifically say, I want to be traded. I don't see this working. Maybe that changes because, again, I think, for probably 9-10 more games, you're not going to have him. And, you got a 5-game road trip there. You got the Celtics as your next game. You got the Raptors. The Nets game on the road is all of a sudden going to be very interesting to see what happens there. So, I mean, there's a chance that I said in December you'll get your answer, and that was before the Giannis injury in the sense of like, well, just be where the Pacers were. Be like a game, 2 games below 500 going into the new year and say, disaster of a start, we're healthy, we feel good about the group we have, and now let's start to play the right way and take off. But losing Giannis for the month is going to expedite that and may give you your answer on where things start to go from here with this group. I think if anything, we've kind of gotten our answer on there is no scenario where you're trading a 2031 first-round draft pick or even this summer, unless there is a firm commitment, the multiple picks that you can trade and the expiring salaries, like, no, we're not going down that path.
That's one of my big questions is, how desperate do the Bucks get if things get ugly? And is there really a thought in the organization like, if we bring in Zach LaVine, we can fix this thing? And I think the answer to that particular player is no. Because again, we talked like when they have Giannis, their offense has been great. Their half-court offense and the rebounding and the defense, and Zach LaVine is not helping you on those fronts. I'm definitely worried that there could be a panic trade. And I think I've long argued like the Drew trade, the Dame trade, like you can say panic or desperation, but also objectively good basketball moves. Yeah. One worked, one didn't. I don't think something exists mid-season. Like I talked about Barrett before or whatever, like RJ Barrett coming in for a first. That's not fixing your problems. I just don't think that's going to help enough. And Kuzma's been okay. I think helpful to the team by and large, does some of the things they really need. Actually, I'm surprised he isn't starting right now. Maybe he will for Sims. Maybe Sims and Portis will start. Who knows against Boston. The other thing, and I realize it's been a lot of like Giannis trade stuff this pod. I do think the other factor on why he hasn't just come out and said like, do it, trade me. I think Giannis would love if it did work out. I think Giannis would be ecstatic if the Bucks right now ripped off 5 straight wins and we're clawing at 500. We're 9th, we're 8th. Like, okay, we're set up to do that Pacers run. I think he in his heart of hearts would be so happy and is leaving the door open for that. Now, is that going to happen is a big question with probably a dire answer based on overall the way they've looked without him this season. But I do think that's the other thing is he's kind of waiting to see like how good can it be / how bad does it get? And the tough part is ton of pressure to put on a team built to play with him without the proven star level players without him. that's a tough spot. I don't think that's necessarily helping matters with how they're playing right now. And hopefully it's not something they're fixating on too much, but I do think that's a thing too. Like if they went on some miracle run and KPJ is just going to be 37-7 and they can win some games, then I think you probably, at least for the rest of the year, you're keeping him. But I do think there's a downside there as well if they continue to just lose every game.
I do, to that point, I do genuinely believe Giannis's preference is for things to work here.
Yep.
And to get this turned around and find a way. It's just, if it becomes inevitable that that's not going to happen, is when all of this starts to become a bigger debate in question. So you have fear that there could be some type of panic type of move of let's have a kid to save the baby type move that happens here leading up to the trade deadline. What I will say that's gotten interesting too, it's a name that's come up quite a bit, or names that have come up quite a bit, and would seem to make sense for this group when you look at Trey Murphy and Herb Jones. I mean, I would assume the Pels, knowing where they are, knowing the disaster of that trade last summer, and like, yeah, we just let a huge asset walk out the door. They do have your 2027 pick coming.
Really weird pick protections there with that one. Well, Atlanta could have it too.
Say. Yeah, potentially have it. So they could come away from this with nothing for the 2 years that you really targeted in that trade of Drew Holiday. The point of all of it is when you look at where you are right now and the potential of like, we have none of these primo assets we thought we would get. You got to start to look around at what can we sell off? Like, we're clearly not where we thought we would be. What can we sell that has some value to it to try to recoup some of those assets? And those are two names that are going to come up quite a bit. What I would say there is, even though we talked about being the desperate side, teams know the Pelicans are dealing from a side of desperation. There's still better offers that are going to be out there for New Orleans, unless it's just unprotected 2031, which those guys aren't the guys in my mind to do that for.
Yeah, I think I have to confirm this with Rohan. I think our midweek pod, because they just don't play any games until Thursday, is going to be like, is there anyone out there that you'd trade that pick for? And then discussing like, I'd trade it for Wembanyama, but you're not getting him, right? So is there a realistic line? And I think the two guys on the Pels are two of the most interesting, and we can talk 2032 swap as well. But I mean, you do that, like, you better scare out of this stid fast, because then you are just totally uncontrolled future for 7 more years here. Which is a daunting place to be. The current spot is daunting. Add 2 more years, I mean, it gets even more so. I do think those two, either one of them, I mean, Murphy's got more star potential. Herb probably fits what you need a little bit better, are the kind of players that, like, in theory, you could at least be like, I get it. Yeah, I help this team and fit going forward. You know, it's not, you're not trading for a 31-year-old who's going to need a new contract. Like, under contract players who are exactly what they need at the 3 and fit with Giannis long-term, and the guards. I mean, I think that's got to be kind of a consideration too of some of these deals. Like, I'm not bringing in a point guard. Like, the point guard's the one position outside of Giannis I feel really sturdy in right now. It's got to be a wing. It's got to be a wing player, I think. So those guys are interesting. I think before the year, if you asked me, I would have been like, absolutely, send the pick, send the swap. Herb Jones, that's great. When you're sitting in 10th, it's a little harder, I think, to say sign off on that move for sure.
Yeah, I mean, when you're sitting in 10th, and as we mentioned, the Bulls are essentially tied with you. It's just they're in a hold my beer off with you to see who can slip even further down there in the standings. But yeah, that's my big takeaway, and this popped up last week, was look, it's still early. It wasn't until, if we look at Philly, it wasn't until mid to late January before Philly made the decision to let's kind of pull the plug here. Like, teams, you don't make the decision in the first half of the calendar year. It's later in the season, but we unfortunately have to keep this on the radar because, you know, at this point, I just look at the loss column. That's more important than anything because those are there. You can't do anything to get rid of them. You are closer to the Wizards when the worst team in the conference than you are to being out of the play-in tournament. So at some point it's no longer early, and that's when it starts to become, we really got to give this some consideration.
Yeah, and I mean I guess not nice, but it kind of feels like it may not be up to them at this point. I mean, the real optionality comes, if Giannis doesn't go, how much do you play him down the stretch? Yeah, when he's back. And that's, I don't think has really been discussed much. That's a really hard conversation.
Well, and especially considering, it's a tough conversation. The easier,
regardless, the 65 game thing is
right.
Too.
The easier quote unquote sell is like this in all likelihood is gone. Like I think best case scenario is he comes back from the injury and is in a spot where he can only miss 1 or 0 games going forward.
Yeah, which I don't think is reasonable, even if you're trying hard for the standings. Like it's been a long time since we've seen the Bucks.
You can't just start him and play him 5 minutes because the minutes
it's got to be at least 20. Yeah, 15 to 20, I think. You have a weird specific ruling there. But yeah, I mean, even outside of that, even if when he gets back, okay, he can only play 64 if he played every game. Like it's not possible.
Yeah,
I mean, like we're seeing different sport, but like they're asking Joe Burrow, right? Like why are you playing? Basically, it's like, well, I'm a pro athlete, and like no one says this, but also like the accolades, but like the stats matter. Like what you do matters, even if you're not going to the playoffs. Everything we've ever heard from Giannis, he's a competitor. Like he's not gonna be like, woohoo, I get to take the year off.
I'll take 3 months off. Cool.
Yeah, like so. That's again, like I think it's easy to say, like, great if you can keep him. Tank it out. Maybe you get a top 4, or top 4 is pretty unlikely, but you get like a top 10 pick, probably worst case. You're looking at, which haven't had since Don, legitimately 10 years ago. Like, hopefully this one works better, but it's been a long time since the Bucks have had that kind of a draft asset. It's not that easy if you don't trade Giannis. And obviously no one wants to see him get hurt anymore, but if he's healthy, it's a hard conversation, and I think they haven't been great with him, but if they're 500 ball, that pick is just not going to be as good.
Yeah, I just did the lottery simulator on Tankathon, which I would assume most Bucks fans are going to be doing quite a bit of. And it's routinely like 12, which is kind of where they're sitting right now. And you get Atlanta over and over again, either winning the lottery or in the top 4. There was one I did that had Atlanta number 3 via New Orleans and the Bucks number 4. So both of them jumped up into that top 4. But yes, it feels like that's what we are going to eventually shift our attention to here. And unless something else comes out, which I would assume will just continue to get these drips and drops coming of like, well, my intel is telling me this, or those types of messages and the same types of responses from Doc and his teammates. So should make for a very, very interesting final 2/3 basically of the regular season. And for the first time in quite some time, we are very likely going to be heavily invested in scouting the college game and seeing what can you get here and who are the best small forwards that are out there in the country right now. You can find Ty, as we mentioned, on the Eurostep podcast with Rohan. You guys with multiple shows a week covering all of this, any Wisconsin herd insights that you want as well. I don't know how much of you guys have gotten. We've seen quite a few comments asking about Victor Oladipo as well. So if you're looking for coverage on that, Ty is your guy. And I would assume most of our listeners and viewers cross over to the Eurostep as well. But any thoughts on Oladipo and why he's not up here yet, and why the Bucks aren't just cornering the market on 6'4" 2 guards?
That's why. I think I haven't actually gotten out there in a while. The G League schedule is even more imbalanced than NBA, but hoping this weekend probably get to see him and now Dennis Smith Jr. in person as well. But I mean, you nailed it, right? The last thing that the Bucks need is more guys who can't play the 3, and unfortunately, that is probably everything 3 and above is the hardest thing to find at the G League level, because the size gets snatched up into 2-ways and true call-ups so quickly. Like the Dennis Jenkins story, for example, is great, but am I surprised that there was a low 6 foot whatever player who can really light it up available in the G League? No, there are a lot of those. Mostly teams don't need them. If you look around, a lot of great guards in the league these days. So Oladipo, I think, really could have probably helped when KPJ was out, but at this point, shot creating small guard, just not even present on my list of Bucks needs. So, but I will be excited to provide an update after I get to see him play in person some more and chat with him a bit.
Yeah, at this point, it's our boy Chris Livingston, the one that got away, and what they're really missing here.
Tyler Smith just got called up. I mean, former Bucks are having a renaissance.
Where did he get called up?
He's got a two-way in Houston, reportedly. I don't know if they actually signed it yet, but I saw a report there. AJ Johnson still not cracking the Wizards rotation down 8 players is a little discouraging, but
interesting, because I was led to believe they just traded the future Magic Johnson. You can find the coverage from Ty on the Eurostep podcast. That'll do it for our show. Maybe not the greatest vibes and tones out there from this episode, but just reading the room in a conversation that probably needed to take place. Thanks for tuning in today to Locked On Bucks. Tomorrow, we hope Camille is recovered. Otherwise, I think we're going to have Frank to discuss more of this and his thoughts on what we've seen. Make sure you subscribe and follow Locked On Bucks so you get all the latest episodes. And if we made your Spotify Wrap, prove it on social media, and you can get a month of our brand new Everydayer Club. Just tag our national Locked On Podcast Network account on any social media platform, and we'll drop you a code. Be one of the first to join the Everydayer Club to get your favorite show ad-free, exclusive access to the members-only Discord channel, and more. For those of you on video, we're going to send you to our first ever 24/7 national NBA YouTube channel. On audio, make sure you make that your second listen, NBA game night on Locked On NBA. For Ty, I'm Justin. We'll talk with you guys once again tomorrow on Locked On Bucks.